diving catch robs Pujols of extra bases, 2 down.
So 2 home runs, 3 RBIs takes away probably 2 runs there defensively. That's 5 runs he's involved in. Matt Chapman.
Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner. Adele onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On he goes. Hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutchen. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
All right, everybody, welcome in to this edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show, and we have a full lineup for you tonight. Of course, I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Vince and Howard. Vince, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Halfway through the work week, shorter work week, so I'm doing great.
Awesome, Howard. What's the story?
I'm looking forward to sleeping this weekend, let me tell you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started. We know there's a lot going on. Maybe the last day that hockey's around and we got the NBA Finals, but baseball is here and we are ready for it. So let's start talking about the All-Star Game, as we know now who is in it, who isn't. So looking over the lineup, these are your starters for the American League. Perez, the catcher, Guerrero at first, Simeon at second, Devers at third, Bogarts at short. Then you got Trout, Judge, and Hernandez. So, Vince, out of that lineup, any reaction?
Well, I mean, you get the token Mike Trout, and is he the best player in baseball? Probably, but he's not deserving of an all-star start this year. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot to complain about, I suppose. I love what Perez is doing this year. Vlad's been amazing. Simeon's worthy. Devers has been awesome. Bogarts has been good. There's nothing to complain about other than maybe Mike Trout. He just doesn't – I love Mike Trout. He doesn't deserve to be there.
Howard, reaction?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, Trout is going to be Trout. Even if he's out for the whole year from April 1st, he's still going to get voted in. It's just, it's just a play on the name. I mean, Vlad, besides that, I don't think anyone, I think Ohtani being the first player ever to be nominated as a starter and a position player, which I think is incredible. Are we talking National League too?
We're going to talk about the
National League. So I'll leave National League. I'll leave the American League. No, I mean, Judge, I think, is having an all-star type year, staying healthy. Salvador Perez is having a great year. I don't think there's anything else. I think it's, besides Trout, I think it's good.
Okay, well, the main thing that I was looking at least we got off the Byron Buxton Express. But they replaced him with Hernandez. Now, where this guy is coming from, I'm not sure. And it's real interesting to me that Toronto got 3 players onto the All-Star starters, and they're playing up there in Buffalo, getting 11,000, 12,000 fans in the stands. So it's real interesting to me to see how that came about. But, there's not a whole lot to complain about as far as the starters are concerned other than Trout. If you're not going to be in the All-Star game, they should just remove you from the ballot.
Yeah.
If that's a known factor, and it's been known for quite some time that Mike Trout would not play, maybe not till August. So remove him altogether.
I don't know. In football, there would be bonuses and stuff tied to making all-star games, kind of at Pro Bowls and stuff like that. So maybe they couldn't do that based off of, I don't know if it's that way in baseball or not. But I would assume there's some bonuses in there if you make the all-star game and stuff like that. So maybe that's why they can't do that.
All right. So that's probably the case because everybody's got a bonus in their contract, even if they're making $28 million a year, whatever it might be. But let's take a look at some of these other players. You got, of course, Ohtani. I didn't mention him. I should have, because like you said, he's the first player to be, a starting offensive player and a pitcher at the same time. They're going to have to make some kind of a allowance for him because let's say he's batting and then you put another guy in to bat for him, then how are you going to pitch him later in the game? So that's going to be interesting to see what they do about that. As far as the reserves are concerned, the thing that stands out to me is that Zunino is the backup catcher from Tampa Bay. And if that's your backup catcher in the All-Star game, what a sorry state of affairs that we have at the catcher position. So, I'm serious. You talk about how there's nobody in fantasy, really that's worth having as a catcher, more than one on your team. Well, this proves that right here, as baseball doesn't have a second All-Star catcher.
Yeah.
So then some of these other guys I question is first my hometown guy, Gallo. And he's only hitting 233. Now, how this dude is getting in the All-Star game is I guess they're talking about, well, that's the way baseball is played now. But I just don't understand how a 233 hitter that just refuses to hit the other way, if he hit the other way, he'd be up in the 280s. You know what I'm saying? So just other than that, everything's good to go on my part. They got Mullins in the All-Star game. He certainly deserves to be there. And of the reserves, Vince, anything that stands out to you?
I think they got a lot of them right. Martinez deserves to be there. Mullins, Jared Walsh having a great season in L.A. Good to see that there. Altuve and Correa both having bounce back seasons as well.
Can't argue with that at all.
Yeah, I think overall it's fine. I haven't dove into the numbers for the guys that aren't in the All-Star game, but I don't see anything that sticks out to me as just, like what in the world is happening here. I don't see anything that stands out like that.
Okay. Howard, anything?
No, I'm in agreement. I'm not seeing anything crazy. A little surprised that Zunino made it over Grandal because Grandal's having a decent year, but I mean,
Grandal just went on the injured list, so.
Oh, that would explain. But I mean, Mike Trout's on the disabled list, and he still made it.
Well, that's
Trout
true.
got voted in by the fans, and Zunino got voted in by the players. So,
So then you got your pitchers. You got Bieber's, who's hurt and won't be there. You got Cole, Eovaldi. Now that's a surprising name, except everybody except for possibly me because I had drafted him. And then you got Gibson from the Rangers. You got Kikuchi from the Mariners, Lynn, and then you got Rendon from the White Sox. Then you got Barnes, Chapman, Hendricks, Presley, and Soto, who I must I'm just going to admit this right off the bat. I'd never heard of him until this week. So if you got him on your fantasy team, then you're doing a lot better than I. The only thing that stands out to me is how in the world does Chapman get into the All-Star game with a 4.71 ERA?
Because
so Howard, since you're a Yankee guy, I'll let you field that one first.
No, he was having a great year before the last 2 weeks. I think his ERA was something like 1.4, something real low. He blew 3 saves in 2 weeks, and that's just because the Yankees just don't score runs, and he doesn't pitch. I mean, he gave up 4 runs. He gave up a grand slam.
That was the same night that we were talking last week about Ohtani gave up 7 in the first, and then somehow or another the Angels still wound up winning that game.
Yep. So I mean, he gave up 4 there, and the last time he pitched for that was 3 days. He blew it to the Mets on Sunday, the first game. The problem is with him, he doesn't pitch. He can't go more than 2-3 days without pitching. If he pitches every other day or every 2 days, he's good. I mean, it's proven when this guy is on his rest, he can't pitch. He doesn't pitch well when he's on 3 or 4 more days.
Most closers, I guess you could probably put that argument in there about them. Vince, anything that
and Chapman not to interrupt, Chapman went through the same thing. I want to say 2 years ago when he went through the slump and they demoted him out of the closer for like 2-3 weeks. He was really good, and they put him right back into closer role, and he was dominant.
I look at the American League pitchers, man, and I'm wondering where Chris Bassett is from Oakland. He's having a great year.
I was wondering that myself, Vince.
I don't know who you.
He got just raked over by the Astros.
Yeah, but he's
yesterday. So that,
9-2.
Yeah.
I look at maybe Eovaldi shouldn't be in over him. Maybe I don't know how you say Kikuchi from Seattle. Maybe he shouldn't be in over him. But with Bieber injured, maybe Bassett still makes it anyhow.
I'm sure he probably will. And you hit on it, Vince. If you're going to sit there and say, well, this guy deserves to be in the All-Star game, who are you going to remove?
Right.
That's one of those things. I've never, ever in my life read an article where they're talking about these guys, they got screwed over. Okay, so if you put them on the All-Star game team, who do you remove?
Right.
Because you can't have it both ways. If you put them on the team, somebody's got to go.
Yep.
And, I would say Eovaldi's having a good season, but it's not better than Bassett. So that's where I'd go there. Switching over to the National League, you got Posey as the catcher. And then you got Freeman. Frazier did make it. Vince. And then you got Arenado, Tatis, Acuna. And then you got your Cincinnati Wonder Twins, Castellanos and Winker. So they did, in fact, make it to the starters. Anything on any of those starters, Vince, that you'd like to comment on?
I thought Chris Bryant deserved it over Nolan Arenado at third base. I don't mind Arenado being in the All-Star game. I just felt like the season Chris Bryant's had thus far was deserving of starting. Outside of that, I still cannot believe 2 Reds are starting, but I understand the stats and everything. That just blows my mind. But Arenado is really the only one that I sit there and go, Chris Bryant was more deserving than him.
Yeah, Arenado, he's hitting 264. That's unlike him. Of course, he's not in Colorado anymore. But 264, 1653 probably shouldn't be the starter for the National League. But then, you don't have a whole lot of outstanding third base play going on in the National League. So that probably explains that. Howard?
I agree. I think, again, you're playing off of the game, off the name, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, at least they didn't, like they did years ago, and they put 7 Cincinnati or St. Louis Cardinals in the All-Star game. So,
you got Arenado returning to Colorado for the All-Star game. There's a little bit of poetry in that, I guess.
So, if that's your worst, issue, then we're okay. Then your reserves, you got Posey, Freeman. No, Posey is the starters. You got Real Muto, Muncy, Albies. Bryant did make it to the All-Star game. You got Escobar is your lone Arizona Diamondbacks player. Then you got Crawford, Turner from Washington, not Turner from the Dodgers. Then Bett, Reynolds. And then they put Schwarber in the All-Star game. Of course, he's hurt. Then you got Cronenworth, Soto, Taylor are your National League starters. Once again, Real Muto is hitting 247. So once again, catching is not bright in Major League Baseball. Any of those players, you go and you scratch your head and say, huh? Vince?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Reynolds from Pittsburgh, Kyle Schwarber, those 2 guys, I'm not real sure what they're doing in the All-Star game. Schwarber's been good as of late, but that's a lot like what we're seeing with Joey Gallo. It's kind of the late bloomer.
That's interesting. Yeah, if you met, he's, since they did away with the spitballs and everything else, he's taken off. So that might explain something there. Howard, anything stand out with you there?
Nope. I think the rosters are, they're good. I don't think anything's super crazy. I'm a little surprised that Juan Soto is going to be in the home run derby, to put it that way.
Yeah, that makes me nervous because he's my guy, and people in the home run derby, and then you got Olson now in the home run derby as well. He's also on my team, so you just hope there's no second half slumps that comes out after that.
Right.
All right, so your pitchers, you got your Milwaukee Brewers, Vince. You got Burns and Woodruff, and then you got Darvish, DeGrom, Gossman, Marquez, Rogers, Wheeler. And then you got your relievers, Hader, Kimbrel, Melancon, and Reyes from the Cardinals. I think that's a pretty solid staff right
And
there.
DeGrom won't be there because he already said he's skipping.
Right, because he pitches Sunday. I saw that. So, you're going to talk about some pitchers that, didn't make it to the All-Star game. You tell me who you're going to take off of that roster. You got solid pitchers.
Yerman Marquez. That's who I take off. But it's in Colorado, so I understand it. But that's who I take off. I know I'm a Brewer fan, so I'm going to sound like a homer. But Freddie Peralta's season that he's had this year is very deserving.
There that stands out is the one that's missing from this team. So, but overall, we're in pretty good shape with the All-Star team, and
let me ask you, Kevin. So growing up, like the All-Star game was a big deal. I loved watching it. It was awesome. You get Cal Ripken Jr. and Jeter and those guys all in there. I got to admit, I'm not super excited about the All-Star game this year, and I don't know. If that's happening everywhere where everybody's kind of like, whatever, maybe the home run derby gets more ratings and the All-Star game gets less. I don't know. But for me, I'm not interested in it this year for some reason.
Well, the thing about the All-Star game for baseball, it has been and continues to be the best out of all the All-Star, festivities, sports-wise, because it's played the exact same way as you would play a regular baseball game. It's not like the NFL where they don't tackle, and in the NHL you got it's 13-12 and crap like that. And then you got NBA where it's 178 to 170. It's a whole different game in the All-Star games than the other sports. But in baseball, it's essentially the same game. So maybe there's so many names that people don't know. Maybe that's got something to do with it. And maybe if they put on a good home run derby show, maybe that'll put some interest into the game. That remains to be seen.
Ohtani's the key this year. He's the guy that's going to draw.
Absolutely. If he goes out there and hits, 6 or 7 balls, 500 feet or something like that, maybe somebody will tune in. And it's interesting, he's already bested the most home runs ever hit in a season by a Japanese-born player. He broke the record earlier today with 32 home runs. So
Matsui never hit more than 32.
He broke his record. He had 31. And so now he has 32 home runs. Ohtani does. So he has the record, and he's got still, 75 games to go or whatever it is. So I just don't want to hear that Ohtani's going to hit 64 home runs.
You know what's crazy? Looking at Matsui's numbers, Matsui never he hit 31. That's crazy.
He held the first 3 or 4 spots for Japanese-born players, but not anymore. So, all right. So, moving on to one of your favorite subjects, I'm sure, Vince. That would be the state of the Chicago Cubs. And as entering today's games, they had lost 11 straight.
Yeah.
So, Vince, what is happening here? What has happened to the Cubs?
Well, there's always next year, Kevin, for the Cubs fans. That's what they always say, right?
That worked for 100 years, but I'm not sure if that worked.
It's pitching is what it is, and it's hurting a lot of teams. It's hurting Atlanta. It's hurting Cincinnati. It's killing St. Louis, and it's doing the same thing to Chicago. Now, Kimbrel finally is starting to look like Kimbrel again, but overall, the Chicago staff has not held up their end of the bargain. And that's the main reason why they've been losing is their pitching is just really, really hurting them. They're in a weak division, right? I mean, the Brewers are playing well, but they have their inconsistencies. Yeah, St. Louis has not been good. Cincinnati has been as unbalanced as anybody, and then Pittsburgh's Pittsburgh. So I mean, this is your year. If you're in the NL Central, whoever you are, this is your year. And right now, I'm interested to see the trades. What'll happen around the trade deadline?
Yeah, we're going
because
to get into that in a minute. So
those teams got to get better. But pitching's the answer right now for Chicago. Why they're struggling.
Howard.
I mean, at least it's not the Yankees. Put it that way.
So,
but no, it's. I like I said, I think it's just when I said earlier in the year, when you're losing, you find ways to lose. When you're playing bad, you find ways to lose, and all it takes one game, and your whole season can be reversed.
I mean, they gave up 28 runs in 2 games.
Yep.
In 2 games.
Yep.
That's ridiculous.
So, and that's a good point, Vince, but I'm going to go the opposite way to where you went. A lot of this problem is their offense. And the reason why I say that, during this streak, they've scored 2, 2, 1, 4, 1. Then they had 7 runs in the first and gave up the 2 touchdowns to lose. Then 1, 2, 2, 3, and then yesterday they had 10. So in 8 of those games, they scored 3 or fewer runs. You are not going to win scoring 3 or fewer runs.
Yeah, and they're up 5-0.
Lately has been awful.
They're up 5-0 in the 3rd inning tonight. So
okay, so we'll see if they can hold on to that. And like you're saying, Vince, they've got some real decisions they've got to have to make.
Yeah.
Because at catcher, they've got Contreras. He's hitting 235. And then they just signed Robinson Chirinos. Okay, I watched that guy play catcher for the Rangers a few years ago. And if you're signing Robinson Chirinos to be your backup catcher, you have problems. So then
they got
Baez. Baez, who's hitting 230. He's hitting 181 in his last 30 games. Rizzo's hitting 249. He's hitting 184 in his last 15. Bryant's 6 in his last 30. Happ is 141, and Peterson's 184. You are not going to win with that kind of offense, and these are all veteran players. Yeah. So the Cubs are going to have to make a decision of who. I think their season's pretty much over with. And
it's looking that way.
It sure is. It's and I'm grew up in Northwest Indiana. I've been to Cubs games. I know what that means to that city, but they're just not. It's just bleak. And all these players are veterans. You can't build around a crumbling veteran, lineup. So I don't know who they could move on from. They're going to have to, I think, sell some of their players and get some young guys in here.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their outfield. Jock Peterson that comes over this year, but Ian Happ and Jason Hayward, Marcinic's in there too.
That guy's just awful.
Yeah, they need to upgrade.
Right on the mound, you forget him.
Yeah, they've got to upgrade badly. Baez is good. Chris Bryant's good. Rizzo is, I don't know where you stand on Rizzo. I'm not a huge Rizzo guy, but
a couple years ago, he was at the top of the first base list. Now he's bottom 20. So.
Yeah, they got a long way to go to get back.
Yeah, they do, and they got to start this. They got to start it now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be, this will be another 25 years, or whatever. So those are the Cubs. Now we're going to talk about the standings and where they are right now. And you got Boston leading Tampa Bay by 4 games, Toronto by 9, and New York Yankees at 9.5. Howard, can you explain what exactly the New York Yankees are doing at 9.5 games out of perfect?
Not doing anything. They're not playing offense or. And the thing about the Yankees, Howard, is their bullpen was actually solid. Their bullpen's been great. No,
how do you pronounce Loizaga or however you pronounce that guy's name?
Their
what the problem is? Solid. Now they didn't have that.
It's not the bullpen; it's their starting pitching, and their pitching hasn't even been terrible. It's the problem is when you get Garrett Cole on the mound, who's a power pitcher, you give him 1 or 2 runs of offense. Theoretically, it should be enough. But you look at the Angels game, for instance, you're up 7-2. on the guy who's going to win the Cy Young, and you can't win the game, add on tack on runs. Because what happens is they go up and they don't score. They go up or they don't hit. Last night they had 12 runs on 18 hits. I guarantee tonight they'll maybe score 2 runs, if that.
Yeah, consistency has been lacking, no question.
And as they always said, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because they're just not hitting, if it's because of the whole there's no the baseball's changed, or if it's just there's no reason. None of the only ones who are really performing are Judge and not even anyone else. Sanchez of late, but that's about it. LeMahieu's no one's hitting higher than I don't think than 285 besides Judge.
So I don't see, because you remember, well, you may not remember because it was way back in the day, when Bucky Dent rode in to save, the Yankees when they were, 12, 13, or they were double digits out of first, and they came back tied, and Bucky Dent won, and he got in the World Series and won. I don't see that happening this year. All right.
I don't see them making the playoffs, personally.
Well, they're tied for last in the American League in runs scored. And when you have that much money on your payroll, yeah. I mean, they're tied with Baltimore and Seattle and Kansas City with 353 runs scored. But if you look at it in a positive light, which I know is hard to do, they're only 2.5 back from the Mets. So if they were in the National League East, they would be right in the thick of it in the National League East.
But
I think the Yankees are going to become sellers, personally. I think Chapman is going to waive his. Chapman and Brand both have no trade clauses. I think they both waive them.
So we've got some interesting things, to be talking about on future shows because the trade deadline is 3 weeks out, away, whatever it is. So we'll be having some talk about in the Central. You got the White Sox. Cleveland has completely the wheels have come off there. They won just one of their last 10 games. They're 6.5 games out of first, which is not a surprise because their pitching staff, it's non-existent because everybody's hurt. And then
maybe they could trade for Trevor Bauer. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
By the way, did Levi sent you?
Yes.
Yeah. I told you.
Yeah, you did. And then you got in the West, you got Houston and Oakland who are playing as we speak. And Houston came back and won that game yesterday. They've got Oakland's number head to head. And Oakland's now 4.5 games out. So I see Houston winning that division.
Houston's the best team in the American League.
When you talk about offense, you talk about their pitching, you talk about their bullpen, they're a solid team. There's no question about that. Then we move over to the NL East, and you got your Mets. Then you got the Phillies, surprisingly, has pulled into second place. They're 4 out. Washington's 4.5 after the Dodgers just absolutely belly slammed them. Then you got Atlanta's 5 out. They just are lacking a spark. I see nothing coming out of them. Then you got your Milwaukee Brewers, and I just want to point this out, Vince, that I'm with you right here. See that? I'm with you in solidarity right now with the Brewers. So then you got the Reds at 6.5 out. So a lot of these divisions that we were talking about that were close, they're not so close anymore. And the Reds problem, you've talked about it before. They're 500 on the road, which is winning, but you can win with 500 record on the road, but they're 3 under or 3 above actually at home. That's not going to cut it. Then
you want to talk about atrocious bullpens? You go look at Cincinnati.
Yeah,
it is bad.
You could talk about the Phillies too in that same breath.
Yeah,
I heard it mentioned on the MLB Network the other day when they were talking about if the games were 8 innings long, the Phillies would be in first place. However, they're not 8-inning games. So then you got the Dodgers were had quite a run there, but still the Giants are half a game up. San Diego is 3.5 back. The Giants have just hit. They just maintain themselves. The Dodgers have won, and they still won, and so the Giants, they're impressing me right now. And matter of fact, one of our esteemed Belly Up sports writers just wrote an article about the Giants. So if you want to check that out, please go ahead and do that. So
who was that?
Those are your divisions right now. I
wrote
would
the
have
article?
to look at it, but he just wrote an article about the Giants, and there was one that just got written about the Cubs. We're talking about the Cubs too, that just went out today, and he's pointing out that they need to sell, which we absolutely agree with.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about some first half moments. We're in the second half officially now, and Vince, are there any first half moments that stood out to you in this season so far?
Not really. I mean, no hitters is probably the one thing that stands out the most. Starting, I think Joe Musgrave was the one I remember the best, but just the no hitters are kind of the one thing that really, really stands out. Outside of that, there's no moment necessarily that I go, oh, this was awesome. At this point, at least, so you got a number of triple plays in the first
the
half.
Yankees have the the magic wand. They can't do much else right, but they can turn to triple plays. So hats off to them for that.
Yeah.
Howard, anything that stands out first half moment?
No, not now. I'm pretty.
He's trying to forget the first half of the season.
Yeah,
Howard.
No, I mean, I think
steamrolls us. So
no, I think a lot of all the no hitters are pretty crazy. I think there's another one today, but it's a 7 inning, so they're not counting it as a no hitter.
Well,
we've 5 pitchers in 7 innings.
That's insane.
Yeah, that is insane. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to agree with you, Vince, that my first half moment is Joe Musgrove. Grove.
Yeah.
Grove. Okay.
You're right.
All right. So, and the reason why that stands out to me is because that was the first no-hitter that's ever been pitched in the history of the San Diego Padres and their 53-year history, whatever it is. And anytime a player can do something that has never been done before, that stands out to me. So when I was able to watch that game live as it happened, because it happened against the Rangers, of course. And so I was able to watch it live. And that's the same reason why my second moment is Corey Kluber's no-hitter. Because if you remember, Vince, we were on the air that night, and we were talking about no-hitters. And you said, keep the no-hitters coming. Little did we know that while we were on air, a no-hitter was in progress at that very moment. So we finish the show, and I go and sit down. And, and I, usually flip on, see what, show or whatever. But I see this big announcement. Corey Kluber, no hit through 7. Okay. So I'll sit down and we watch it. And that was the very next night after the no hitter the previous day. So that stood out to me just because we talked about no hitters that night. And what happens that very day? Another no hitter. And then my third is not a good memory for the player that did it. But it's something that has not happened since 1983. I'm talking about Ke'Bryan Hayes, who hit a home run against the Dodgers, but except he was out because he missed first base.
Yeah.
I have, I've watched a lot of baseball in my life, and I've never seen that ever before. And it was glaringly obvious that he missed first base. So, he's a young player, and he's over there watching the flight of the ball and everything else, and just totally – blue. So that was, a moment. That was a memorable moment. Not a good one, but it stood out to me because, like I said, that's the first time that's happened since 1983. So those are my first half moments. And so let's switch over to fantasy. And I'm going to ask this question, and I don't want to get into whether, we think he did it, whatever. But what is a fantasy owner to do if they have Trevor Bauer on their team? Vince,
I'll take it.
Okay,
keep him. I say keep him till MLB lays down a suspension. I mean, we already it might sound crude, but he hasn't been officially charged from police department. It hasn't been, he hasn't been suspended by MLB. I mean, we'll take a step back. Has Osuna been suspended by MLB yet?
Well, he's officially on the injured list, so I don't.
He's on the IL. But at the same time, I mean, Osuna, he was injured. So for Bauer, I personally would say, he was suspended by MLB for a week with pay for 7 days. So he's going to miss a start. I say keep him until, what's the point of dropping him, because it's.
Well, the answer can't be to drop Trevor Bauer. That's not the answer. So the question is since he's got administrative leave, can you put a player into an injured list spot if they're not really, the injured, if they're just out? And if that's the case, if you can't do that, then that kind of mucks up the waters a little bit.
Well,
because
depending
you have to on your roster, you have to.
Depending on
Trevor Bauer, he's one of probably the third pitcher off the board, maybe fourth in the draft.
Well, it depends on your league. Like for instance, like in one of my leagues, you have for instance, you can pick up people who aren't drafted, right? So for instance, you could pick up Wander Franco, drafted him, and kept him on your bench. In my other league, we have NA spots. So depending on your league, you can have NA. So you can put Bauer on an NA spot because he's technically suspended. It just depends on your league settings.
Vince, want to weigh in?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by just saying this, and I covered this in my podcast yesterday, but in no way do I support domestic violence.
No, of course
none of us do. I still want to say it, even though I think it's obvious.
Yeah.
I also don't like to pile on people until they've been proven guilty.
Right.
So I want to be careful with that too, that I don't bash them because
right. That's not why I brought up the subject with him, is to get into whether he did it, didn't do it. You know, what should the authorities do with him? But
when it comes to fantasy baseball, a lot of it depends on where you are in the standings. If you're higher up in the standings, you can afford to have him on your roster, and because if he comes back and he's still around for the playoffs and stuff, obviously you still want him. If you're lower in the standings and you're desperate for wins each week, I think your option is to trade him. You got to look to move him and try to get something positive in return for him. If you can't afford to have him just wasting a roster spot, you definitely do not cut him. At this point,
cutting Trevor Bauer is not the answer.
If you can afford him on your roster, you keep him. If you can't, then you look to trade him, and you try to get a haul for him. And if you're in a keeper league, well, even that, it may not matter, honestly. Right. His career may be over. We don't know. But no, I would say, and now listen, I didn't draft Trevor Bauer on purpose.
I didn't either. And
I don't want him on my team.
If you remember, Vince, way back in week 1, none of us three were sold on him. And he has put in a tremendous season. So far. He has. He's answered every bell you could ask for out of a pitcher. So, that just heightens the level, because if you drafted him, he's the ace of your staff, most likely.
Yeah, right now I think I would be looking to get rid of him, not drop him. I'd be looking to trade him because I'm wondering, even in a keeper league, is he going to be back? We have no idea. Is he ever going to play again? We have no idea. If he does play again, is he going to, pitching is a very mental position. You've got to be dialed in. What's he going to be like? And he's already off mentally. We know that. But will he be able to focus in? I don't know. I'd be looking to move him. I'd be looking to trade him if I was general manager. That'd be my advice. The people who own them.
By the way, the Yankees are going to lose tonight because Nick Nelson is pitching.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's your answer. If you can put him into, like I don't have any NA spots on mine.
Yeah,
in
me
my
neither.
league. I've got injured lists, and that's all I have. So if he can fit into one of those lists, you do that. Then you figure out, because everybody's injured list and stuff is full, you figure out who you're going to drop. Well, Trevor Bauer is not the guy to drop. So
correct.
So you either put him on a list or you trade him.
You watch very carefully what happens in the news, and you try to, as soon as you get word of something, you make your move then. If you can trade him before news drops that he's never playing again, you better get on it now. But that's where you got to be reading every single day. You got to be reading what's happening. Is there any update? But we're not going to see him again. They said even after the 7 days, he's not going to come back.
7 days is over as of this weekend, I believe.
Yeah. But, you got the All-Star break coming up and everything, so maybe they're going to wait till that's done and hope some other crazy story comes out and everybody forgets about him. I don't know. But he's going to miss a couple starts.
Yes. All right, so let's move into the area of waiver pickups. And of course, that's waving right into my area because I write an article every week on that. But we're going to start with you, Vince, and players out there do you think that are warranted picking up off waivers?
I've gone all in on the Willy Adames train for Milwaukee.
Me too.
He's been really, really good. I've got him picked up in 2 leagues, and I'm trying to acquire him in a 3rd league right now. Actually, I did acquire him in a 3rd league tonight.
Woo!
So
look at that breaking news from Vince right there. So.
I traded him straight up for Dansby Swanson, and I'm happy with it.
I'd be doing handstands out there if I could have traded, Dansby for him. So so good to go on that.
Yeah, right now the Brewers are actually pretty heavy on the waiver wire.
They are, and I don't get it either because their hitters are hitting. They have players on there that have multi-position eligibility, and one of those players is one of the guys I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So you go ahead, Vince.
My other guy is Zach Collins, catcher for the White Sox. Grandal's been injured. Mercedes got sent down.
Yep.
He's going to get some playing time.
For Mercedes that he'd pick up, and not only is he not picked up, he's buried right now.
So Zach Collins is the guy that I'm watching, White Sox catcher. So between Adames and Collins, those are the 2 guys that I'm on right now. And then other than that, it's Brewers. And anytime you got an injury, you got to figure out who's going to get the playing time. Because we saw that with Seattle earlier when Kalenic came up. I kept saying, but where's he going to play at? They had a full outfield. He was going to get some playing time, but he wasn't going to get a ton of playing time. And obviously, it didn't work out for him. But you got to do some research when someone gets injured and figure out what's the depth chart like, who's going to get the playing time, and then take a risk every now and then with those guys that are going to get the opportunities.
Yep, I'm right there with you, Howard.
No, I haven't. I mean, my team, I haven't even bothered. My team is just done. I actually made some trades this week, so I want to go over those with you when we're at that point.
Okay, so that's coming up. The trade portion of our show is coming.
Yep.
I promise you on that.
But no, I mean, I was looking before. Like you said, a lot of Brewers. But the thing is, in my league, it's a 12-person league, and we have like 27 roster spots. So there's really no room to pick up. Like, it's always deep. Like, I looked at like who's available. I think the highest person who what's in the percentage roster was 53% of all Yahoo rosters. So there's still our teams are deep. So there's not a lot of movement half the time.
Yeah.
So Willy Adames headed my list, Vince, and then I've got another Cincinnati Red, believe it or not, and that's Joey Votto. And
as a pickup,
why he's hitting .409 with a .500 on base percentage and a .773 slugging percentage in his last 7 games. He has hit that 8 of his last 9. So if you need a first baseman, get Joey Votto today.
Well, get it while he's hot because he won't be hot for long.
Well, that's one of the things where you got to really kind of watch things because you get on the train, hopefully when it pulls out of the station and they're hot for a week or so, and then they start leveling out. So then you jettison them and get somebody else, depending on the size of the league that you're in. But that works in my league. So
here's a random question for you. I'm sorry I didn't think of this before the show, but what position seems to be the easiest to find a plug-and-play guy? We were talking about Votto, and I thought first baseman. It seems like you can always find a first baseman just to plug and play for a week or whatever like that. Not necessarily long-term, but when you have a guy get hurt or something like that. I think of guys like Miguel Sano, who's around, it seems like, all the time. Hosmer's around.
In my league, too, so.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just thinking about that. First base seems to be the easiest position to find.
Players, you got outfielders, obviously. And so that's what I'm saying. If you're struggling with your outfield, there's no reason not to make a move. Right. There are certainly players on the waiver wire that can help you out.
You can find someone else that's batting 220.
You can find someone. And surprisingly enough, because I'm going to bring this guy up because he's been on the waiver wire way too long, and that's J.P. Crawford of the Seattle Mariners. Okay, he's on a 6-game hitting streak. Just got snapped yesterday, but before that, 6 games he was hitting 346 and a 414 on base percentage in his last week, and he's by far the best hitter of the Seattle Mariners team. So, if there are a lot of shortstops, but if he's in your league and you have any infield issues, get him. And the last guy I'm going to bring up is also a Seattle Mariner, surprisingly enough, and that's Chris Flexen.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a 3.80 ERA. Yeah, he pitched 6 innings in 6 of his last 7 starts. And he's only owned in 33% of leagues. Now, that I don't understand. So
he's got 4 quality starts in the last month, 2-0 in the last month, 2.27 ERA, 31 innings. I mean, yeah, he's on my team. And I think he's been great since I've got him on.
He's been great, and he's been in on my leagues waiver wire way too long. So those are my guys. How about some struggling players? That what do you do with some of these guys? Any struggling players that you're trying to figure out what to do with it?
Yeah, I'm trying to move Dylan Carlson right now in St. Louis. He's batting
too, Vince, so I'm right there with you.
He's batting 204 in the last 30 days, 5 RBIs, 1 home run. He's got a little bit of a name value, so that's why I'm trying to trade him. Some people, especially if they're Cardinals fans, actually, if they're Cardinals fans, they'll probably more stay away from him. So find someone who's a casual Cardinals fan and doesn't pay attention well. A guy that I've had for a while that's been really productive, but has stopped being productive is Jonathan Villar from the Mets.
I dropped him, Vince. So yeah. Right
position flexibility. He was doing some really good things, and now he's kind of dropped off. So Carlson's the one I don't know what to do. And Benintendi's as well. He has really struggled since coming back from injury. I'm not going to cut him, but those are guys that I'm really looking at right now and trying to figure out exactly what's happening with them. Drew Smiley is another guy, pitcher. He's been pretty popular in the waiver wires here recently, but he's not been great. No. But if you need a pitcher, maybe he works for a start, but then you drop him and go somewhere else with that roster spot after that.
All right. So Howard, any struggling players you're trying to figure out what to do with?
I traded them or I dropped them.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. So
Kevin, tell me what's your thoughts on Wander Franco? He started off really well. He's really slowed down. What do you do with Wander Franco?
Well, that depends on what kind of league you're in. Once again, if you're in a dynasty or keeper league, I think you keep him, on your team. If you're in the redraft league, there's players out there that can help you more than him. So just to put that simply. And a couple players for me, you named him, Dylan Carlson. He's on my list. He has a hit like 1 out of his last 15 games. That just ain't cutting it. And another player is my guy, Yadier Molina. He had, started off real strong, but he's down to 252. And the only thing that keeps him on my roster is he's a guy that can start 5 games a week. So I don't have to have another player, catcher that's hitting 182 or something like that. But he's a player that needs to kick it up. But since he's older, maybe that's not going to happen.
I've got another guy for you, Kevin, that you would know a lot about from Texas. Isaiah, how do you say his last name? Kiner.
Yeah, him.
He has dropped off drastically.
You got that, Vince. And they were trying to tout him as a player that should be at the All-Star game. Well, he tripped over his own feet badly enough so that talk stops. And he, it's been brutal for him. And that's the player that you don't really want to drop if you don't have to, because he has shortstop and third base eligibility.
In Yahoo, he has catcher eligibility also.
Okay, well, that was last year in the ESPN leagues, and that was, proper because he actually played catcher the year before. He didn't play catcher last year.
Yeah.
So he does not deserve that. And, that's a player that you're going to have to figure out what to do with him. And what about some players that are just outright drops?
Whew, man, I don't know. I guess I'm optimistic. So I always kind of hold out hope that they're going to come around. And I don't know. Dominic Smith is the guy that I've had most of the season that I kind of want to let go, but then all of a sudden he has a good week, and so I got to hang on to him. And then when he starts going bad again, I start thinking, but he just had a good week, so he'll come back, right? So that doesn't answer your question. I'm sorry for mentioning Dominic.
No worries, but yeah, I'm right there with you with that same team, but I'm going to go with Michael Conforto. And the reason why I'm saying that, he's hitting 136 out of his last week. He's hitting 207 on the season, yet he's owning 73% of leagues.
Wow.
That's hard to me to justify because we talked about that earlier. Outfield, there's a lot of outfielders out there. You don't need somebody who's hitting 207. So he's the player at my top of my list. Another one is Victor Robles. Okay. He's hitting 105 out of his last week. He's hitting 214 on the season. He has 1 home run and 10 RBIs. You can pick up somebody off the waiver wire that's had more than that this past week alone. So he's not getting it done for me. And Howard, I'm sorry to keep on banging this drum, but that's Gleyber Torres to me. Because not only now is he not playing well, but he has a hamstring cramp. I don't think I've ever heard of a hamstring cramp before. So Howard,
he is playing tonight, though.
Is he playing tonight? Okay,
yeah.
But he's hitting 125 in his last 7 games. He's only shortstop eligible. He has no hits in July. I know it's only 7 days in, but he has no hits.
Last
in
3 weeks,
None.
yeah, he's
zero.
Yeah, he's
zero. So
I thought of some people.
Okay.
Sorry, it hit me while you were talking. Eugenio Suarez, Cincinnati.
Yeah, there's no salvation for him. So,
and the other one's Jorge Polanco in Minnesota.
Okay, I was looking at him as well, but he didn't make my list. But he'd probably be like number 4, right there. All right. So, Howard, any players that you're thinking about to just be outright dropped?
My whole team.
Your whole team. I'm sorry to hear about your team is just struggling upstream. You know what I mean? So
he's a seller.
I am all right. Yes, I am.
Seller. So anybody that's in his league that's listening to this broadcast, if you like any players, hit up Howard right now. Yeah. All right. So are there any players out there, and I've got a couple of them, that might be trade worthy that you can pursue in a trade? Anybody that stands out in that area?
Give us yours first, Kevin.
I'm going to go. Okay. So there's some players, and they're all pitchers. And these are players that are pitching for teams that just are terrible, obviously, and they're going to be sellers. And they could get traded to a team that's in contention. So those 3 players are, I'm going to start off with Kyle Gibson of my, Texas Rangers here. People don't realize that this guy is 6-0 with a 198 ERA.
Well, until tonight.
Okay, I did not see the results today. I know they played earlier today, but
he got lit up today.
Today's action, and he was 6-0 with a 198 ERA. So, that is not sustainable. But if he gets onto a team that's a contending team, maybe you can turn that into some points or, some production for you. The second guy is John Gray of the Colorado Rockies, and he has a 3.89 ERA. And any player that has a below 4 ERA that pitches for the Colorado Rockies, you need to pay attention to that. But yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, the first 4 players from Arizona came up and doubled off of him. So it was looking really, really, really bleak. But he gave up 2 singles the rest of the way. So he's a player that if he got out of Colorado, got onto a team that's competitive, he could turn in some wins for you. And the last guy is Jose Barrios of Minnesota. He's 7-2 with a 3.52 ERA. He's about the only player on Minnesota right now that's really kept their value throughout the season. A lot of other players have just completely nosedived on Minnesota, as we noticed that their season's over. It's been over for a while now. If he gets on to maybe Jose Barrios is a player that they wouldn't trade, but he's a guy that I would look at also.
So your question is guys that you should be looking to acquire via trade, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
guys that you could be looking to acquire on your team.
gotcha. Okay, so I would say Dylan Cease from the White Sox. He's had a solid season, but he's
Okay.
still only owned by
see that.
79%.
Yep.
So there's a chance that whoever has him would be willing to let him go. So he's definitely a guy that I kind of keep an eye on. Other than that, you got to look at the guys that have really struggled in the first half that you expect to get better in the second half. So we've talked about a lot of the Mets players. Pete Alonso, he's starting to come back around. Lindor is a guy that I would honestly, depending on what your situation is, of course, would be a guy that you might be able to get for cheap that I think is going to have a much better second half of the season there. Other than that, you're looking for guys, my goodness, I don't know. There's so many injured guys still that it's hard to find good value in trades right now. You almost have to be willing to give up something decent to get something decent. So I don't know. I think there's guys out there. I like guys like Trent Grisham, who's been injured a lot this season, hasn't got to play a whole lot. He's a guy that I would look to go after. And again, talking about getting value, you might not have to give up much to get him. Yastrzemski has really started to struggle, so maybe his price is getting lowered as well. And that's a guy I'd be all in on for the second half of the season too. So those would be the kind of guys that I'd be thinking about.
Well, Howard, you stated that your team is pretty much in the doghouse. So, is there anybody that you're looking maybe that's out there that you could trade for that would help your team?
Nope.
Nope.
I'm rebuilding.
No players.
Rebuilding.
All right.
Mode. I'm selling.
Going draft pick.
Selling. And so, all right. So the last thing we're going to talk about is the state of our fantasy teams. And Howard, I'm almost afraid to bring this up because, as you've made known, your team is is pretty much buried. But
I did make a couple of trades this past week.
Oh yeah, let's talk about Howard's trades.
All right.
Yeah.
So, remember last week I mentioned that guy I was trying to get Scherzer? Well, I broke down. I traded him Scherzer for
what'd you get back?
A 27th rounder. Just kidding. No, it wasn't that. No. So I ended up I traded Scherzer, a 23rd rounder, a 26th rounder for Maeda, and I got back a 7th rounder and a 16.
Whew.
Yeah.
I don't know about all that.
Well, so I know I was thinking I wanted at least a top 5.
Well,
but
Kenta Badita is the guy I'm going to talk about in a minute, so I'm going to tell you why. I'm like, I don't know about all that.
Well, remember I'm rebuilding, right? So Maeda is, if I can trade him again, I'll trade him again. But if I drop him, it has no impact on me. I'm gunning for the bottom so I can go next year. I wanted a top 5 pick, but I figured, well, if I can go top 10 in a middle round, I think that'd be okay, and that's what I got.
Okay.
My other trade was I traded Julio Urias and a 27th rounder for Jose Alvarado and a 9th rounder.
I like that one.
Okay.
So, and here's the reasoning again. So we have keeper picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So the way that we do our keepers, let's say Scherzer, I drafted him in the 9th round, and I didn't have any 9th round picks. I would have to apply my 10th round pick to him, so he wouldn't lose his 9th round status. So I had a bunch. I was like, you know what? I could probably get a little bit more for Urias because he's having a good year, but I figured top 10's fine. So I
like that trade a lot.
Okay.
Then I made another trade.
That works for me.
Another trade, which I'm still unopposed. However, so I traded Trevor Story, who I love, but I think he's going to get traded. And he's, I think he's just not. I think his days in Colorado are limited. And I also traded Ian Anderson.
Ooh, he's my guy.
For a 21st and a 22nd for Jorge Soler, Rich Hill, a 6 and a 13.
Yeah.
So Trevor Story was a 7th round keeper for me. and I don't plan on keeping Rich Hill nor Soler. Now, way that our draft works is that if, say, I picked up Anderson, right? So if I decide to keep him as a keeper, it's wherever he gets drafted, where his ADP is next year. So if he's predicted to be a round 2 ADP, I would have lost a second rounder. So I made the judgment call, and I'm just trying to build up my picks.
Yeah,
So
I like it.
I like him too. I wouldn't say he's a second rounder.
Well, no, I'm just saying that's how the draft picks. I'm just saying that's how it works. So I basically just don't mind that. Basically, I was like, Story was a 7th round keeper for me, so I actually got a little bit better because I got another higher pick than him. So I think it works out.
Yeah, and whoever you traded it for, they did win the trade for this season, obviously, but I think that you won the trade for next season.
Yeah. So he got and let me see where I drafted Scherzer. Give me a second here.
All right. Well, he's figuring that out, Vince. How your team's looking?
Oh man, is it fantasy football season yet? It's not pretty, and I've got good teams, man. I got talented rosters, and I cannot get these wins. It's killing me. Not good.
So I actually drafted Scherzer in the first round.
Oh yeah.
So I probably lost on that, but I got 2 draft picks out of it.
I would say that you did. And so on my fantasy team, remember last week, Vince, I was talking about how I was going head to head with the guy, me and him were tied for first, and I took him down, and it was a great week. Okay. So switch to this week, and I'm going to tell you, these are my pitchers, okay? And this is their performance this past week. Yu Darvish, 6 points. Aaron Nola, -3. Rial, or however you want to pronounce his name, -8. Jose Barrios, -2. Ian Anderson, he was my staff ace last week, 9 points. Kevin Gossman had 0 points. Sean Manaea, -2. Rich Hill, -2. Kenta Maeda, you talked about him a minute ago, -14. All right, and this player right here sums up my entire week. Okay, and that is Pablo Lopez of the Miami Marlins. Okay, so for those that don't know, he started against Atlanta on Friday, and Atlanta and Miami have this history of rushbacks and,
Oh, that was nasty.
Yeah, so both teams were warned before the game even started. We're not having any shenanigans today. We're not going to have it. So what does Pablo Lopez do? He hits Acuna with his first pitch of the game. He's immediately ejected. All right. That run comes around to score. That's the only run of the whole game. And Rays win 1-0. So for one pitch, this is my grand total. Ready? -7 points. That was my pitching staff last week. So needless to say, my week was in the toilet. So
and you're never drafting Maeda again, are you?
And the thing about it is I dropped him, as I said last week. Then on Sunday, you know how many points he had? 30.
By the way, I don't know if any of you guys have him. Domingo Germán is out tonight for the Yankees because he had an emergency root canal.
Hey, well, I've had 2 root canals all at the same time, so I can give some sympathy.
Can it get any worse for this Yankee team?
No, I don't.
It can, by the way. It can.
So we're not going to get in all that. So, all right. So that's pretty much our show for today. And Vince, I saw you yesterday, Vince. As you know, I was watching your show.
Yeah.
And you're putting some really good stuff out there.
Thank you.
So tell us where we can find you.
All right. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, we go live on YouTube, the Sports Stove Podcast, 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then, of course, it's available in podcast version afterwards. Big show tomorrow night. We're talking NBA Finals with Parker Ainsworth. We're going to be talking NHL Stanley Cup. We're going to be talking UFC 264, Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, covering all that tomorrow as well. So big show tomorrow night, and we're working on trying to line up some big guests down the road as well. So stay tuned, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Anywhere you get your podcasts. On Twitter, you can find me at Sports Stove.
All right. So Howard, where can we find you?
Crying because the Yankees are terrible. No, you can find me on Twitter, NY Sports Guy 13. I don't tweet often, but usually it's I usually retweet some funny stuff, some sports stuff. Big when football season starts. I'm usually cursing off the Giants. Usually cursing off the Yankees or bad plays, but yeah, anything New York, you can find me there.
Sounds good. And of course, you can always find me on Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA, and you can always find my stories on the Belly Up Fantasy site. Every Monday it drops, and so you can always find me out there. If you have any questions about fantasy baseball, you can shoot them my way. I'll be more than happy to talk about that. And the last thing I'll just say, Vince, we need to have a discussion about you and your hesitancy about the Tennessee Titans. Okay?
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of Titans slander over the next 2 months.
Okay, so I look forward to that. And so that's pretty much our show, and we'll see you guys on the flip side.
Thanks for watching.
All right.
Have a good night.
Catch you all later.